So Kyle, welcome to The Journey. And The Journey is a show that is basically just, I invite just ordinary individuals to come onto the show to talk about maybe their story of how they may have had some hardships in their life, and then what did they learn from those hardships? If they've had some setbacks, how did they fail forward? And then most importantly, what things did they learn about themselves as they move forward in their life? So I know we talked the other day on the phone, and it sounds like even though you're a young person, it sounds like you've had a couple things that have gone on in your life. And so
Yes.
maybe you could just share just a couple things about yourself to get started. And then, and like, maybe we'll just start off with what do you do for fun? But before you do that, how do you pronounce your last name?
Cuniff. It is people either say Cuniff or Cuniff. They kind of get that mixed up, but it's
Sure.
Cuniff.
Cuniff. Okay. So Kyle Cuniff, and you just graduated from Pecatonica High School
Yes.
here in Illinois. And so what do you do for fun, Kyle?
Um, your typical teenager stuff. Most of the time it's video games, but it's usually I like to be in the gym a lot. It's my quiet place. It's stuff where I can get away from everything. I can lift. It's just me, and it's a very peaceful place for me.
Nice. Okay. When did you start lifting weights?
Well, my freshman year when I got into high school, I had to start doing it for football, and before that, I never really thought about doing it.
Yeah.
Didn't seem interesting, but once I started doing it, looking even as a freshman how strong I could be, it just gave me it was kind of like an adrenaline rush, like just lifting and being able to do all that heavy weight.
Mhm.
And ever since then, I love lifting.
Gotcha. Yeah. And now with everything going on I know things are starting to open up now with practices and things like that. But where have you been able to lift at?
In my town of Pecatonica, we have a little gym. It's called Summit Fitness. It just opened up about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I've been able to get back in there, start lifting for my football. For football, I got my workout schedule. I can do that, and because I was never a big at-home lifter, and I'm not really a fan of doing all that body weight stuff. So once the gym was open up, and I could go back to the barbell, go back to having the dumbbells, that was a really big, pep in my step having that. It was nice being able to go back.
Sure. Yeah. I know for me, I started lifting weights when I was 11. And so 40 years ago, I started lifting, and it originally started off with the same reason. Wanted to get stronger for football. I wanted to be able to play. I didn't want to be left on the bench type of thing. And maybe similar to yourself, once I started seeing gains, then I was more encouraged. And then the stronger that I got, the more that I lifted, the more gains that I made, the more that I lifted. So the more gains that I made. So
Oh yeah.
I think that's the thing that with people that have had some start off, at a early age, meaning early high school, and they start seeing those gains, it can definitely become part of a lifestyle.
You just get hooked on it, and you just can't stop doing it.
Yeah, yeah, and I took a quick glance at your Facebook page, and you have some personal records on there. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, so what would I didn't memorize it, but what's your bench record?
315 so far.
Okay, so 315. That's a decent amount of weight, right? And then you have your squat in there.
I got 475 for that.
Okay, and then what was your deadlift?
475 too.
475. Okay, so now. Did you have any other? I don't remember if you had any other.
I think I had power clean on there, and I got 250 for that.
250. Okay, so and you so you're a wide receiver, right? You play.
Oh,
So what position do you play?
I play defensive and offensive lineman.
Okay, you're a big dude. So I was
Yeah.
not that wide receivers aren't big guys, but you're a big guy. So you play what position on the line? Defensive line.
For defensive, it's either nose guard or defensive tackle, and
Okay,
for offense, it's offensive tackle.
offensive tackle. Gotcha. Okay, and have you always played those positions, offense and defense?
Oh yeah, I started playing football in seventh grade, and I was always the biggest guy on the field. So
Okay.
lineman has always been the position I was, forced to play. I couldn't play any other position. So, and
Okay.
ever since high school, I just started liking lineman, and it's
Okay.
just a great position.
Sure, sure. Well, and again, looking at that, that power clean, that's some big guys may not have the quickness to be pushing that much weight. So that tells me a little bit of your quickness that you have regarding being able to get that much weight up and getting underneath that. Uh, so
I really
so
count that to my flexibility. That really helps me in that aspect.
Okay. So who kind of turned you on to working on flexibility, because that isn't usually, the stereotypical big guy isn't usually focused on flexibility. It's just about getting bigger and getting stronger. Who kind of
Well, really, I just found out myself that I was flexible. Because I wanted to be a kicker, and I wanted to be a kicker and punter, which for my size, it's something that not many people see. So you had to be able to get your leg high. So I started practicing doing that, and I realized how high I could kick. And I'm like, wow, I'm really flexible, and it just turned into me, doing that. I found out I could do the splits, which is a big thing. It's a big thing for a big guy being able to do that. And
absolutely.
I just been starting to work on that, stretching all the time, so I don't lose that, because a lot of people don't stretch, they don't work on that, so then they lose their flexibility, and then I don't want to. That's one thing I have, and one thing I would like to keep is my flexibility, if anything.
Absolutely. And as far as speed wise, what have you been tested at the 40? How's your 40 speed?
No, I don't think I've ever done that before, but being a big guy, speed is
Okay.
not my strongest point of
Okay.
anything.
So more really with that flexibility, being able to focus on that quickness and just that first couple yards.
Oh
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So tell us a little bit about your family structure. Who lives in your family household right now? So to give us a little bit of a summary, kind of an overall summary of that.
Well, right now it's I most of the time live with my dad and Peck, because my parents are divorced. They got divorced in 2016. 2017. They got divorced, so I live with my dad. But in the divorce, I never really did like, okay, he goes here this time. He can stay with you at this point. It was more of a whatever I choose. Just something I liked about that is they never forced a set time of who I can see. I can choose who I want to see. So I
Okay.
try to spend as much of a time with both of them this equally, and not one person the most, or not spend much time with the other person. So it's split of who I'd like to go see at the moment.
Gotcha. And do you have siblings?
Yes, I have one brother.
One brother, older, younger?
Older. He is
Good.
23.
23. And Kyle, you're 19 right now?
18.
18. Okay. And so you graduated from Pecatonica, going to be going to school at Rockford University. Going to be playing football there, and it sounds like as you were telling me that things right now, as you're going into college, things have definitely been moving in a positive direction and looking up, but that hasn't always been the story.
No, that
Okay,
is not.
good. So why don't you kind of fill us in on, as you think back to, I don't know, grade school, middle school, that time period, what was life with Kyle? What was it like back then?
Well, I'd say with most people look at it, I had a good childhood up until about eighth grade. My parents were together. We'd go on trips. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, who were a big influence in my life. And up until about eighth grade is when everything, I get the more of the bullying started to happen and all of that. Being the bigger guy, people always like to pick on you, and in situations you're always the first one that adults see. So if like something happened, I'd be the first one caught on, even if it wasn't me.
Hmm.
And it wasn't nice being the one person. If something happened, they'd look at you, even if it wasn't your fault. Being the bigger guy, I was one who was always their first thought. Oh, he's a bigger guy. It wasn't the other people. And that it was one of the parts that didn't help at all.
So in some ways, was there like an expectation that because you were physically bigger than some of your peers, right? Was there an expectation that you were supposed to act older, be more responsible, like that type of stuff?
Oh yeah. In church, I was always the one who did all the caring, did all the stuff. If people who never met me before, they'd they'd always think I'm 3 or 4 years older than I'm actually is. So I kind of had to act older than what I actually was because that's what people thought I was. So I
Okay.
always had to act older than how old I actually was.
Okay. All right. And what do you think, thinking back on it now that you're older, looking back on that, what what do you think was the reason that you noticed, or the bullying aspect got more intense or more frequent, or whatever, in eighth grade? Why do you think that was? Why do you think it was more intense then?
Well, that's when I first started playing football and being the bigger. People started noticing how I was a bigger person, so they
Mm.
found another reason that we can make fun of him because he's a bigger person. And I was never the best at football when I was little,
Okay.
so that was another aspect they can use to bully me. And that's when I started to realize how big I am compared to other people, and it started to put into realization all people are gonna start making fun of me because I'm bigger than everyone. I'm not how big you're supposed to be for an eighth grader. You're not the norm. You're not a normal person because of how big you are.
Mm. And was this the same group of kids that you were with through grade school, middle school?
Oh yeah, being in a small town, it's
Yeah.
usually the same people going all the
Yeah.
way through.
Yeah. And what made you decide to go out for football in eighth grade? Because you was football started before that, right?
Oh yeah, but I never really seemed into it
Okay.
until I actually started playing football seventh grade.
Mhm.
That's one of the coaches saw me be a big guy. They're like, hey, you should go out for football, and I'm like, never really played it. I didn't think I'd be good at it, but I'm like, I do nothing else. I'm like, I got to get out at some point. So I
Okay.
decided to go out for football, and I enjoyed it. I wasn't the best, but it was nice to be able to be out there and be a use for a team.
Okay. And and again, this isn't about throwing anybody under the bus or anything like that, but there may be somebody listening as they're listening to this who may not necessarily understand, right, what that's like, to be someone who's been bullied, because you don't normally think of someone who's the biggest guy on the team as being the person who's the victim of the being bullied, right? It's usually you think of the little guy or the one who's real mouthy, or something like that. um,
Yeah.
but I coached for a lot of years after I stopped playing football, and I remember thinking back on it, even as a coach, I remember just assuming if the guy was big, right, you just assumed that he'd been playing football for a long time, and you just assumed he knew what to do. And, as far as if we're doing a blocking drill, you just assumed he knew what to do. You just assumed he knew how to get into a stance and come out of a
Yeah.
stance. And I found out that that was not the case at all. That we had to go through and break down the mechanics, and sometimes because there was such a growth spurt, that they were still trying to grow into their body, and their brain and their body weren't necessarily syncing up
Yeah.
together, and there was this awkwardness. I don't know if you
That
can identify with that at all back then when you were in middle school.
Oh yeah, because in seventh grade my stance was horrible. I would always tackle high because everyone's so little than me, and I never played before, and I never learned the mechanics of tackling, how to get into your stance. I never learned that, and everyone assumed I knew how to play because I'm so big, like you said. He must have played before, and it really hurt my morale of playing football because everyone expected such a high standard, but I couldn't play at that standard because I never really knew how to play football, and it really took a hit in my love for football at that time.
Sure, sure. And even though there was something that still attracted you to the sport, not being able to meet that expectation, I'm assuming that also played possibly into the kind of putting the target on you to have the other kids,
Yeah,
make fun or bully. Yeah.
and always being the one that was pointed out of someone who'd cause trouble, even though I never really caused it. It kind of made me act as like the word gentle giant. I always acted like that because I never wanted to be the one who was called out on stuff. So being acting like that growing up to make sure you're not the one who's called out on stuff, going from that kind of attitude to being a gentle person because you're bigger than everyone, switching that attitude to having to hit the other person on the other side of the line. It was hard to transition from being that gentle person to having to lose all emotion and try to hit the other person on the other side of the line.
There is an interesting aspect of that. We're asking you to be a good person and a nice person and a gentle person and a kind person when you step off the field. But now we want you to turn on and we want you to be aggressive. And,
Yeah.
uh, and that's hard to do even with older people, let alone, someone who's just trying to figure out, how their body's working in these weird positions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So kind of fast forward a little bit, then some things started building up, right? So kind of tell us a little bit more as some of those expectations weren't being met. I know you had told me the other day that, when it came to academics, the effort, you weren't putting a ton of effort into it. I mean, you weren't a kid that got in trouble a lot, but you weren't necessarily putting 100% of effort in.
No, I definitely didn't.
Yeah, and so the combination of all those things, and it sounds like there's beginning of some family stuff happening too.
Yes, that's when around 8th grade, 9th grade, my parents said they sat me and my brother down. They said we are getting a divorce, and that kind of was a big hit to like everything to me. I started getting really sad, and I saw no point in everything.
And what, looking back on that, why do you think that you were so caught off guard or surprised? It sounds like you were surprised that mom and dad were gonna uh, that they were separating.
Well, thinking back on it now, I don't know how I didn't see it because starting about my 6th or 7th grade, my parents never slept in the same room.
Hmm.
My mom would sleep upstairs, my dad would sleep downstairs. At that age, I don't know how I didn't notice that because right now I notice, oh, there were telltale signs, that they're probably not happy in the relationship. They probably aren't really, giving each other enough effort. But at that time, they always acted, they always held hands in public, they always showed affection. So hearing them say that, at that time, it really caught me by surprise.
Sure, and it sounds like they weren't doing the classic fighting all the time and
No,
screaming at each other and stuff like that. So if you're not really looking for it or paying attention, you
yeah,
wouldn't
you
know,
don't see
right?
it.
Right, exactly. So in the midst of that, you said that sadness, and then you had some of the stuff going on at school and church, and being kind of being picked on or bullied or made fun of or stuff like that. And then you said that sadness led to an aspect of um, what's the point?
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit more about, from what you remember about that time period,
And,
about
oh, I'm
that
sorry.
about that time period of, well, what's the point? This is gonna be like this forever.
And yes, that's definitely how I thought. One of the probably biggest things that kind of set me over the edge is that around that time is when my brother got diagnosed with a brain disease. At this time, we don't know if it's curable, and kind of realizing that I might never see my brother again. Finding out he has that brain disease, finding out there might not be a cure for it, or it's gonna be a long time. That on top of everything, and just the thought of losing him, it really pushed me to really thinking, what's the point? If I'm going to lose someone I really care about, why keep on going?
Hmm. Hmm. So even though you care about football, you care about certain things, you find out, I think the words that you use are kind of like, well, I wasn't the best at it, right?
Yeah.
But you still continued and persisted with it. Some of the getting picked on was going on. Mom and dad are separating, and then your brother is diagnosed with cancer,
Yes.
so a brain disease. So this pile is getting, this weight on you, and this darkness is getting darker and heavier at this point.
Yes.
And then at some point, it sounds like you must have reached out and told somebody that it was getting darker. And so how'd that all unfold?
Well, it was the second semester of my freshman year, and I had this big English paper that I was struggling with, and I didn't really. It was due in a couple of days. I haven't really done anything to it, and all that stress was just boiling up. So we have a counselor at our school, And I went to her, and she asked me if everything's okay. I'm like, I have this project. I haven't really been focusing. She's like, well, you had so much time. What's going on? Is everything okay at home? And then after that, I kind of just exploded with everything. Cause at that point, I never really had anybody to talk about all that stuff. And I just told her everything. I told her I find no point in life. What's the point? I don't have anything. And that's when she decided, okay, you definitely need some help. And she called my parents. She called my mom and told her we're gonna have to, send your son to a hospital to get checked out. And that's where everything started to go into where I started going to the hospital.
Gotcha. Okay. And at that time, had you actively thought about suicide, or was it more, had you actually thought about suicide, like hurting yourself? Um, Go ahead.
Yes, I had thought about the idea. I never thought I'd do the intention, but it was definitely
Yep.
something that I would think about at night when I'm alone or I'm in my
Yep.
bed. It was something that was in my head.
Okay. Okay. So one of the things that we call that is that there's this continuum, right? That I came up with that talks about, sometimes we can feel depressed, and then sometimes that depression will lead to a feeling of hopelessness, and then sometimes that hopelessness can lead to that feeling, like you said, of maybe better off I wasn't here. So it's like a death ideation. And then if that sticks around for too long, we might start having thoughts about how I could take my own life, which is that suicidal ideation. Some people don't go any farther than that, which means their intent doesn't increase if they get help right away. But without getting help, that intent increases. They start thinking about a plan, and then they start thinking
Yeah.
of means of the plan, right? And so because of that paper that was due that you couldn't concentrate, struggling with, got behind on, and then intervening with that counselor, they kind of caught it, had you talk about it, and you had enough courage and to be able to at least share where you were at. Okay.
Yeah, I think if I never had that talking to the counselor that day, I feel if I would have just kept quiet, taking the bad grade on the test, I feel if I never had that talk with the counselor, I never would have been open with it. And it's scary to think that what could have happened if I just kept it all inside and didn't openly talk about it. It scares me what could have happened.
Sure, sure. And how dark or how deep that hole could have gotten. Sure.
Yeah.
So then you went to the hospital, and so tell us a little bit of what was that experience in the hospital?
The place I went to was a place, I think outside of Milwaukee,
Okay.
and it was a nice place. What was good is that when I first got there, I got there I think mid-April, about 2 or 3 weeks after my birthday, and when I got there, the people were very kind. They said, "We're just here to help you. Nothing, this is a safe place. We're here to help you." And hearing that was very comforting. It's a hospital, it's a mental hospital. It's not the place you'd think to be a comforting place at that time.
Hmm. And by any chance, was it Rogers Memorial? Does that sound familiar?
I that sounds. If I saw the building, I would definitely know it. But
Okay.
yeah,
And that's the only reason why I say that is one of the hospitals that we refer a lot to, up in the Milwaukee area. So, and they work with adolescents, so that's why I was wondering. But so one of the things that you remember about that experience was that people were kind, they were listening to you. It was a safe place, right? What other things from that experience do you think you took away from that kind of brought you in, started changing some things in your life? Anything else that you can remember that you might have learned there about yourself, or you just learned tools there?
I think seeing the other people, and because what I saw there is some stuff that if I never went there, I never thought would happen. You see kids because they would do anything to cancel out any reason of cutting yourself. A lot of kids had cutting problems, but I saw these kids who we had these wristbands because when we were there, you had these wristbands. They'd even use that, and seeing people whose parents would never visit, kids who were in and out of there every month. I met this one girl, and she said she's been there for a couple months. She says she's in and out of there I met this one kid who said he actually, during a school day, had gas and set a kid on fire during school. And seeing these people and realizing how low like I could get and I could get to that point, it kind of got in my head. My mom was always there. She was willing to risk her job, willing to stay in Milwaukee. She stayed at the Ronald McDonald House. It was close by. She she was willing to lose her job just to be there every day, just to see me. Knowing that I actually had people there was definitely something that says, well, why should I put them through this when I know I can get better?
Mhm.
So I went to every session there. I made sure I would, because a lot of kids, they would find excuses. Oh, I just want to sleep. I don't want to do this. I would make sure I went to every session, every coping skill lesson, anything that could help me, that could get me out of there quick enough. I did so I could show my mom that I'm willing to get better, that I can be a better person.
Gotcha. Okay. And then so then you're there. How long were you there?
A week.
A week. Okay. And then upon discharge, you get discharged. What do you remember? I know this was a while ago. So what do you remember upon discharge? What was the game plan after being in the hospital? I mean, you got, from a standpoint of school, it sounds like it's end of your freshman year, school wise. You got football to get ready for your sophomore year. But obviously they had some suggestions for you to do, to other things to do as far as outpatient counseling or things like that. What things did you do afterwards?
Well, because of my grades so bad, I wasn't able to do football my sophomore year because I had a 0.9 GPA as of my second semester freshman year. So I realized that's out the table. That's not going to happen next year. And that's about 2 weeks later is when I first got, recommended to do counseling. It's when I met Matt, and realizing I was going to have a counselor. It was nice knowing I was going to have someone I could talk to on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Having that was very helpful. I now realize I didn't really realize that at the time, but having a counselor was definitely a big thing after getting out.
So you started counseling with Matt at KP, and what did you, as your wrap? So you had an under a 1.0 GPA, at that point in second semester your freshman year, and there's probably only a little bit of school left, right? At that point, I
Yeah,
think it was like a month
I
left
think
or something like that.
yeah, probably not even.
Okay. And so what things, if you could again remember that particular summer, because obviously school's done. Did you do summer school or did you just go right into the summer months?
I just went right in. I didn't do any summer school.
Okay.
I think my parents didn't think at that time it was probably right to do that.
Yeah.
So I just went right into summer. Had to start my sophomore year. I was going to see Matt, I think, on a weekly basis. I was going to see him. So pretty much my whole summer was just going to see Matt, talking about everything, getting accustomed to having a counselor, trying to grow that bond with him so I could be more open and everything.
Okay. Okay. And when you went back to school, your sophomore year, what was different about your sophomore year than your freshman year? But for
Um,
for for Kyle.
I think it was that's when I started to realize I had the people with me. So I did step up my academics a little bit. I don't think I ever got either semester above a 2.0, but going from a 0.9 to at least, not getting all Fs, I kind of realized how academics were a big importance after freshman year, and definitely realizing I had help from the teachers and everything was a big thing going into my sophomore year.
And would you say that the combination of being in the hospital, working with Matt, was that kind of where you started learning to ask for help?
Oh yes, learning that I had the people around me, the people that are willing to help me, and knowing that I'm not alone was definitely a really big help for me.
Okay. Okay. And then you also started lifting weights your freshman year, right?
Yes.
Or was it end of your freshman year you started lifting weights, or what?
Uh, Beginning because I had to do it for football, and
Okay.
then actually since I never had football my whole sophomore year, I really don't think I ever lifted. So I definitely was set back a lot in that. Not having football, I never really saw a need for it. So my sophomore year, I really let myself go in that aspect.
Okay. As far as working out wise and just focus on academics and meeting with Matt and things like that. Okay.
Yeah, I never. I just
So during that time period, when would you say? Because at some point there was this shift that happened academically, lifting weight wise. When did that really shift to the point where you took that on and brought it, started bringing that to the next level?
probably end of my sophomore year because that summer going into my junior year, I had to do uh, because the coach because end of my sophomore year, I started getting a little bit back into lifting. I started lifting with the superintendent. He got me back into doing that, and that's when he talked to. That's when we just formed the co-op for our school. We co-oped with Duran Beck, and he talked to the head coach, and he's like, "Hey, if this kid keeps his grades up, I think he'd be a really good part of your team." And I started talking to the head coach, and I told him what happened my freshman year because as a whole, it was just our Pecatonic team. I told him how I was made fun of a lot and never really saw a point in playing football. He's like, hey, with me around, you won't have that problem. This is a better team. And he kind of got me into that mindset. Well, hey, if I don't trash right now, later in life, will I just look back and regret not going back out for football if I had the chance? So
Hmm.
that's when I started realizing I had to really hit the books, get better grades, start lifting out, and being able to show the coach that I can get back to helping the team.
Gotcha. Okay. And and so as you were doing that, what was going into the, so this is now the first year, your junior year was the first year of the DUPEC team, right? The Durant
Yes.
Pecatonica co-op team. And what seemed to be the same, what seemed to be different when you're now, it's now been, you've been a year off. You haven't had football your sophomore year, but now this is
Yes.
a different team, different coaches. So what was it like going stepping onto the field then, and what was similar, what was different?
It definitely like a more like a team, um, like feeling, not more because back in the Pegatonica team, it was more of an I person. I didn't do it; they did it. It was people started taking more accountability. It felt like people were more willing to help their teammates, not put them down, not make them feel lesser than who they are. It felt more together than I think at that school it's ever been, and to me, it ever felt.
Gotcha. Okay. And so as this is going, how did your junior season go? As far as did you get playing time? Did you what was your experience like?
I got a little playing because I was trying to reacclimate to
Yep.
being the big guy. They definitely wanted to put me in as soon as possible, so I definitely got more playing time than probably someone who was smaller than me would, just
Yeah.
because of how big I was. I was getting a little more playing time, but trying to you know trying to redo everything, relearn everything after taking a year off. That year was definitely more of me getting back to what I could be.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. It sounds like the coaches were definitely working with you more, and really showing you technique, showing you the, how to walk through that. So, and do you think some of that had to do with the fact that you were upfront with them about what your previous experience was?
Oh yeah, I think me telling them that and how I felt, they definitely learned that I might be a little hesitant in things, but they were willing to, take it slow, help me learn pretty much the basics of back to football, and showing that this place is more of a team atmosphere than it was before.
Yeah. Okay. And then you going into your senior year, what was different in the end of your junior year going into your senior year as far as preparing for football?
Well, actually, my junior year was the first time my second semester of my junior year was the first time I ever had A's and B's. So I was really that kind of gave me a little excitement, kind of told me I'm ready for this, and that's when I started to really put in the work in the weight room, get back up to what I could be. And we had a really good team at that time, and we had a lot of promise going into the next season. And I was really thinking, hey, this senior year we can really do something. We can set example for this program. We can start setting this team to a winning standard. It was
Sure.
really good at seeing the potential we had going into there.
Gotcha. And then so you were feeling like you were going to be able to contribute and be part of that, right? And
Oh
so
yes,
academically, your confidence is now up. You're starting to see some even more results in the weight room. It sounds like, and then I'm guessing you were probably doing some, the summer camps and the summer, things like that. And so how did the senior year go?
oh, we were able to finish 7-3 and 6-3 in the regular season. We were able to make the playoffs. We were able to clinch a playoff spot. We were able to win our first playoff game as the JUPEG program, and it was at home. We were able to blow out Chicago Harlan. We beat them, I believe, 44-14 or 21. We were able to really, kick their butt. That was a really good feeling to be able to win our first playoff game at home. Then our next week was against Byron, and they're a very good team. And it kind of showed us that we still have some work to do. We did lose to them. It was a big beating to us, but it kind of showed us we have the potential to do stuff. And knowing I was able to help this team end off the season with the playoff win and be able to set this team on a winning, mentality was definitely nice. It was definitely an emotional time after that game, realizing what just happened in the whole season, all that.
Sure. Well, the fact that you had a playoff win, and then you draw the state runner up the year before and the future state runner up, uh, that's a tough draw in the second round.
It definitely is.
Yeah. So, and then how do you, when you look back on yourself as a player, your senior year comparing to your junior year, how did you see yourself as a senior? Player, offense and defensively.
Definitely, I was more helping the younger players, seeing people who are probably in the same steps I had my freshman year. Maybe they aren't really, thinking it's a good thing for football. I definitely went to help people more, help the younger kids, help them get ready and show them that they can do a lot of stuff when they get older and they can do a lot of good for this program. I definitely try to take a little bit more of a more leadership role than I did before.
Sure, sure. Okay. And more playing time your senior year?
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, and so that must have been a good feeling as well. Okay.
Having the trust of the coaches to play, that was definitely a really big morale booster for me.
Sure. Okay. And then again, having the season, follow through with having 6 wins in the regular season, is huge, and it's not like, and what was your conference?
Oh, we were in the NUIC, arguably the toughest small school conference in Illinois.
uh, Without a doubt, right? I mean, because almost every year for I don't know how many years that you guys have, throughout the season, you have at least two or three teams that are in the
Oh
top
yeah,
10 throughout the
for
whole
what?
season.
Yeah, for 1A, I don't know if every year this decade we've had a state winner, but almost this whole decade, almost whole last decade, we had a state winner in 1A or 2A, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. So they've been on a run for a while. So to be able to be 6-3 in that conference is definitely something to say,
Oh yeah,
especially with it being a young co-op team.
oh yeah.
So, so we talked about the other day that everything since getting out of the hospital hasn't always gone super smooth.
No,
There's been a couple other setbacks that you've had during this time period, because I think, for the people who are listening, you know, obviously there were some things that you learned. You learned that um, to have a counselor, have someone to go to that wasn't family, that you could talk to about stuff, was key.
oh yes,
Asking for help, continue to put yourself out there, and pushing yourself to find out what, you know, if you put the work in, you're going to get, it's going to come back, the benefits are going to come back from that. And so even though that took some time to get caught back up and get that momentum going, you definitely you saw the hard work paying off. It sounds like.
Oh yes, knowing that if I put in the work and utilizing the tools that people gave me, knowing what I had the potential to do, it was a big step up for me from my freshman year and before, and being able to do better academically, which was a big thing for me.
Sure. Sure. And so, as we were mentioned, there's other setbacks. What were some of the other setbacks that occurred during this time as well?
Definitely trying to work on my social ability, not being very social before, working with Matt and trying to put myself out there more because I still hated, even after I got out of the hospital, to try to be more social, to try to talk to more people. That was still a major setback that I had to work through and get through after I got out of the hospital.
Sure. Okay. And if you think back to like the difference end of your freshman year, beginning of your sophomore year, compared to now graduating, getting ready to go to college, what if you look back in that younger Kyle, what were some of the what were some of the fears from a social standpoint? What was some of the self-talk that was going on that said, I don't know.
I guess even the little things of, during school, raising your hand, if I raise my hand, I'm gonna be, oh, he's stupid. He's just doing that because he doesn't know what he's doing. Just the very very little things just scared me, and that I couldn't even fathom doing bigger things of everything else. It was the little things were keeping me back from doing bigger things.
Kyle, it's interesting that with what you just said about that whole uh, not wanting to raise your hand because you don't want people to then know that you don't know what's going on, right? And it's funny that you bring that up because I remember that. So I always thought that I was, because I was an I grew, I was the height that I am right now, which isn't very tall. I'm 5'7", 5'8", right? But I happened to be that in eighth grade, which makes me the one of the taller kids, even though I probably still wasn't as tall as you. But it was one of the taller kids back then, in eighth grade. Well, I'm in the back of the football line, in the top row of the pitchers. Well, my senior year, because I'm the same height, but everyone else got taller. I'm in the, but I remember, I remember not just in grade school and middle school, but high school and college. I remember had this in my mindset. I had this thing where I'm not going to ask questions because I don't want people to know that I don't know. So I would sit and just wait and watch and observe, and it's not like I would, I wouldn't necessarily lie or anything, but I would try to observe or try to just figure it out myself.
Hope, yeah, hoping someone else would ask that question, and if they didn't, you're like, well, I just don't know. I'm just gonna give up at this point. If I don't know it, I don't know. That's the way I thought.
Yep, yep, and especially not the fear of doing that, especially in front of other people, right? In a large crowd, I would talk myself out of it all the time, you know. And I found out later for me that was definitely connected to how I thought specifically men were supposed to be. As a man, I was supposed to know. As a
Yes.
guy, I was somehow supposed to already have these answers. And if I was asking a question, clearly either I wasn't paying attention, or I wasn't smart enough to get it the first time.
Yeah.
And so it was such an interesting time for that you brought that up because I felt the same thing a few years ago when I was young too. so, so, but but as I've talked before, that was where I learned through doing men's work, through a counseling process called men's work. I learned from other men that it was okay to ask questions.
Yes.
And what's interesting now is my primary way that I get paid professionally is by focusing on how to ask questions. So interestingly enough, that
Yeah.
the person who refused to ask questions in public now is not getting paid to ask questions as an adult.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known that when I was 14. you know so so during that time period, how was your brother doing? What was going on with your brother as far as the diagnosis goes?
After the diagnosis, it was pretty much just a downhill. At this point, it can only get worse at this point. There's no improvement. Because what was wrong is they found out I believe it's his cerebellum, the one that does your motor skills and
Mhm.
your basic functions. It was 70% dead tissue. So at this point, it just only gets worse. We can't find answers, and that whole time, I'm just seeing my brother slowly deteriorate, and it was definitely a thing. Even now, it still keeps me back. Always that thought in my head that it only gets worse.
Mhm.
It's still a big thing in my life.
And your brother's 3 years older than you?
Yeah, 3 or 4.
So he's 21, 22,
23.
23. Okay. And so 23 years old, and he lives with your mom, lives with your dad,
Live with my mom.
lives with your mom. And you said just from a motor skill standpoint, he's really deteriorated. So is he in a wheelchair or?
No, he's not at that point. He can still walk, but when he walks, it looks like he's absolutely drunk. He runs into walls. His depth perception and his spatial awareness are not up to what it should be for a normal person. If he turns a corner too fast, he'll run into a wall. If he gets up too fast, he might fall over. He trips over anything, even if it's just air. It's the little things that you think a normal person can do, he can barely do.
Gotcha. Okay. And so how have you also your brother's got obviously is continued ongoing health issues and deteriorated. Mom and dad got divorced 4 years ago, right? 2016, 17.
2017, yes.
17, so 3 years ago. And so how has that worked out for you, is navigating between the two homes and stuff like that? How's that been?
The one good thing about that is when they had the divorce, they put into the thought that we're doing this because why put on this lie? They made sure it was a good divorce. They didn't make it an ugly one where they'd argue back and forth. And they said the funny thing happened at the divorce court when they did this is when the judge said, this is one of the easiest divorces I ever had. You guys are so agreeing. You're not arguing. You're not bickering. So knowing that they took into account me and Daniel, and knowing that if we just argue, it's going to make it 100% worse. So what's the point of arguing and bickering when we can just get this done, knowing it's the best thing to do instead of keep that lie up? They were able to think about us and not just think about themselves.
Sure, sure. And you're right, that does, you know, all parents have the opportunity to do that, right? But the temptation to make somebody the villain of the story,
Yeah.
and making someone the bad guy, um, it's that temptation is so great that sometimes it's hard for them to resist it. But it sounds like your parents did a great job of not having to have somebody be the bad guy.
Yeah, they could easily went for the, oh, it was her fault, she did this or he did that. They said, this is for our children, this is the best way to do it. We don't want to make this harder for them than it already is.
Right, right. Okay. And so school ends weird, right? Because COVID comes in, and so spring break happens, or right around spring break and stuff like that, and or at least the middle of March, and school's done, right? So what was school like? I mean, this is your senior year, all the things that go on your senior year. What was that like? It,
It was
you know,
my first semester. It was a great year. We had the football, and I was able to get a 3.5 that semester, which was jaw dropping for me to be able to look at that report card and
mhm,
see something above a 2.0 and even at a 3.5. I probably had the biggest smile on my face seeing that, seeing
sure.
the potential I had, And then
Yeah.
going into that second semester, I was all high hopes. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do better. I have the ability to do better. And once I was doing so good, you had this virus. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be bad. Because I'm a big procrastinator. If I don't have someone right next to me telling me what to do, more than likely I'm going to put it off.
Hmm.
But for me, I was able to, push through everything, be able to get everything as done as quick as possible. The teacher would assign it, I do it, and after the school year ended, I was really worried to see my grades are like, is it going to go down? Is it going to go up? But they gave out the report cards, and when I opened it, my jaw dropped. I saw a 4.0 for my second semester, and I was elated. I was happy knowing that I was able to get a 4.0 my last semester of high school. It probably, to me, was one of the best moments in my life, being able to see that, seeing what I was able, the hard work, the using the tools I was given, all that stuff to be able to do that. I was very happy.
I, no kid. And you went from the end of your freshman year, being in this dark, dark place. I think you said that your GPA end of your freshman second semester was under a 1.0, right? Of like a
Yes,
point nine
zero point.
point
Yeah, point 0.9.
0.9, and then your last semester, your senior, is a 4.0.
Yep. Well, overall, it was a 2.3, but
Sure,
just those
sure.
little, yeah, but just those little semesters gradually going up
Yep.
was definitely a very big thing for me.
Yeah, just comparing the last semester of your senior year compared to the last semester of your freshman year, it was that much of a jump.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. So obviously now there's a level of belief, right, that you have the capabilities if you put the effort in, don't procrastinate, do it when it's assigned, right? That's part of that formula. And so when you were thinking about going away to school, or that next step, college and stuff like that, what were some of the thoughts that you had regarding football, regarding academic, regarding what you want to do?
Um, in my sophomore year, when I realized I had to get myself like my stuff together, I'm like, college is not going to be an option. I probably won't be able to get a high enough GPA to get even looked at or even thought of being accepted. So I tried my hardest, and after ending with a 2.3 cumulative, um, I believe it was in the end of football my senior year. Actually, Rockford University, they came to our school. They talked to me and a couple of my friends who play football, and I asked them, I probably will get at best 2.3, 2.5. Will that be good enough? And they said, hey, we'll look at it, we'll see. And ever since then, I was talking to them, and they were able to. And the head coach, Coach Zimmerman, he was able to, really do what he can. He was able to, get me looked at, because he said at first they weren't even going to look at me because of what my GPA was, but he was able to, stick his neck out and show that I can put the work in, I can do that. Being able to get accepted at a college, and I never even thought I was going to make it to college. It was definitely very big for me.
Nice. Well, congratulations. And that is where you're going to go next year, right? You're going to go to
Yes.
Rockford University, and you're going to be playing football for them.
Yes.
Nice. And you just said you just recently got the workout program, and you started doing the weight program and stuff like that.
Yes.
Nice. And then what are you thinking? I know it's early on, and there's a lot, 4 years to go, but in the next couple of years you'll have to pick a major. What are you thinking right now that you may want to major in?
Well, I have picked my major. My major will be psychology. I want to become a clinical therapist, do what Matt does, being able to help people that have gone through that are going through what I've went through, and to show them that I've gone through what you've been. There is a light on the other side of the tunnel. Just to be able to be that little light of hope in someone's life is what I want to do. It's what I've wanted to do since I've gotten out the hospital, and seeing how the people have helped me. It's something I want to do.
Sure, sure. Well, I am grateful to hear, right, and that that you want to take your experience and share it with other people, and then continue your learning so that you can even learn how to, even besides your story, but then learn strategies and techniques about how to help people when they struggle with whatever it may be, trauma or depression, anxiety, whatever it may be. So it's for me, it has been one of the choice that I made 30 years ago to major in or actually 30 years ago, I graduated with a degree in psychology from Illinois State. But 34 years ago, when I made that decision to do that, it's definitely led to a career and a life that I can't imagine doing anything different than that. So welcome into the fold. So the journey of learning about ourselves and how our own thinking is, and then doing exactly what you've done in the last few years of implementing certain strategies that you've either learned from Matt or learned from coaches of how to improve yourself. That is key to give you insight of how you're going to, at some point in the future, be helping others. It's the concepts in the books are great, and they're great for passing tests and writing papers. But when we can apply those concepts and theories into our own life, and then we see them work, then all of a sudden you're going to be able to see opportunities to help other people. It's kind of like what happened with you helping out the younger ones your senior year with football, because other people showed you how to do certain things and you could show them.
Yeah. No, they're not the only one. That there's people that are willing to help them.
Yeah. And you know how intimidating it was being a freshman and having a senior, and especially a senior who's getting a lot of playing time and is a big guy, that's even more so.
Oh yeah.
So it's a big deal. So as we're kind of just wrapping up, Kyle, what would you, if there was anything in particular that you would want people to know about your own journey, or anything about your own journey, about what you've learned along the way of this piece that you would want to share with them, what would you want to share with them?
Definitely to realize that how I realized that there are people around there willing to help you, and that if you utilize the people around you and what they're willing to do, that your life is a lot easier. If you just think it's all yourself, I have to do this all by myself, you can accomplish that doing a lot of stuff doing that, but you can't reach your full potential until realizing that there are people around you that can make your life easier, that can help you get to where you want to be even quicker than you think you can yourself.
Yeah. Perfectly said, Kyle. We all need help, from other people. It's our responsibility to let other people know where we're at and what's going on. And it's our responsibility to be open, and not only open to letting people know, but open to feedback. But then we still got to do the work, right? We still got to do it, So, but that's absolutely perfect. As I'm thinking, as we wrapping up, just the other day we talked to the first time on the phone, and this gentle giant who we probably could have said that maybe at one time, and maybe even still, is a little bit shy, that the fact that you were willing to come on here and share your story, that takes huge amounts of courage, my friend. And so I give you a ton of credit for changing your own stars, and being able to do the hard work, and like you said, asking for the help, but then doing the hard work of implementing those tools, and then just even coming on this type of platform and talking about it. And
because this is something I never thought I'd do. My freshman year, if I was told to do this, doing this, I probably never would have done it. But realizing how far I've come to be able to do that is something that I'm proud of.
Yeah, definitely. It probably doesn't match up to opening up that envelope and seeing that 4.0, or getting 7 wins in your senior football season, but it definitely got to be somewhere in the top, 10 or 25, right? So, So Kyle, Caleb and I will have to come to a Rockford University game this year. As I mentioned, Caleb played football for Coach Zimmerman a few years ago. So we'll have to come down and watch you guys play football. It's an excuse for us to come back to RU and come back on the region's football field. So I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story, and then, but most importantly, sharing what you've learned along your journey.
All right. Thank you.
All right, you have a great freshman year in college. All right, we'll talk to you
Thank
soon.
you.
Okay.
Yep.